The rehearsal dinner had ended 2 hours ago. Trevor had driven Brittany back to her hotel. They wanted to do things the traditional way, she'd said, not seeing each other before the ceremony. I was in my kitchen, hand-washing the good china we'd used for the small family gathering, when I heard the key turn in my front door. I assumed Trevor had forgotten something, but it wasn't my son who walked into my kitchen at 10:30 that Friday night. It was Brittany. She stood in the doorway wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her wedding day spray tan already applied, making her skin an unnatural orange in my kitchen light. Her blonde hair was tied up in a messy bun, and she wasn't smiling. Not the sweet, demure smile she'd worn all evening while my son looked at her like she'd hung the moon. "Eleanor," she said, my name came out flat, almost businesslike. "We need to talk." I dried my hands on a dish towel, my 72-year-old heart already starting to pound. Something about her tone, about the way she'd let herself in without knocking, set off alarm bells I'd learned to trust over 7 decades of life. "Of course, dear," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Would you like some tea?" "No." She walked further into my kitchen, this kitchen where I'd raised Trevor by myself after his father died, where I'd packed his school lunches and bandaged his scraped knees and celebrated every report card. She stood there like she owned it. "This won't take long." I waited. "Tomorrow," she said, crossing her arms, "things are going to change. Trevor and I have discussed this, and we both agree. We need our own family, our own space, our own life." "That's wonderful," I said carefully. "Every married couple needs—" "Without interference," she cut me off. Her eyes were hard now, nothing like the soft, grateful looks she'd given me for the past 6 months. "Without extra baggage." Extra baggage! The words hit me like a physical blow. "I'm not sure I understand," I said, though I was beginning to. "Let me be clear." She stepped closer, and I could smell her perfume, something expensive Trevor must have bought her. "After tomorrow, you're no longer family. Not really. You're Trevor's mother, sure, but that's history. His future is with me. Our future doesn't include Sunday dinners and just dropping by and constant phone calls about what we're doing or how we're spending our money. Brittany, he's told me all about it, Eleanor. How you've always been clingy. How you can't let go. How you still treat him like he's 12 years old." She smiled then, and it was cruel. "Tomorrow that ends. You'll come to the wedding, you'll smile for the photos, and then you'll step back. Way back. Maybe we'll see you at Christmas. Maybe." My hands were shaking. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. "Does Trevor know you're here?" "Trevor knows everything." She checked her phone, bored already with this conversation. "Look, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just being honest. You had your time raising him. Now it's my turn to have him, all of him, and that means you need to understand your place. You're not the most important woman in his life anymore. I am." "I see," I whispered. "Do you?" She looked up at me, and for just a moment I saw something calculating in her eyes, something that made my blood run cold. "Because I need to know you understand. Tomorrow you can either play nice and accept this, or you can make a scene and prove to Trevor that I was right about you being difficult. Your choice." She walked to the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Eleanor, that house of yours. It's worth quite a bit, isn't it? Trevor mentioned it's paid off. That's nice. Really nice. You should think about what you want to do with it. You know, for the future. Trevor and I might need a bigger place soon, and it would be such a shame if you were rattling around in all that space by yourself." She let the sentence hang there, the threat, or was it a promise, crystal clear. Then she left. Just walked out of my house like she hadn't just torn my heart to pieces. I stood in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd raised my son alone for 30 years, and I let myself cry. But only for 5 minutes. Because as I stood there in the silence, something shifted inside me. They didn't know, neither of them knew, what this 72-year-old woman was capable of. They didn't know about the documents in my safety deposit box. They didn't know about the conversations I'd been recording, They didn't know that I'd already been planning. They didn't know that this 72-year-old woman had one more card to play. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I got there, how I ended up standing in my kitchen on the night before my only son's wedding, you need to know how it all started. You need to know about the 6 months that led to that moment. 6 months earlier, it was a Wednesday morning in March when Trevor called me at 7:30. I was already up, of course. At my age, sleeping past 6 feels like a waste of daylight. I was having my coffee on the back porch, watching the cardinals fight over the bird feeder I'd hung last spring. "Mom," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I met someone." Trevor was 31. He'd had girlfriends before. Sweet Olivia, who became a veterinarian, ambitious Rachel, who moved to New York for her career. He'd never sounded like this about any of them. "Tell me about her," I said, settling into my chair with my coffee. "Her name is Brittany. She's 28. Mom, she's incredible. She's smart and funny and beautiful and, Mom, I think she might be the one." I was happy for him. Of course I was. Trevor had a good job as an accountant at Morrison & Associates. He'd bought himself a nice condo downtown, and he deserved to find love. After his father died when Trevor was just 3 years old, I'd devoted my entire life to raising him right. Sometimes, I wondered if I'd done too good a job, if I'd made him so comfortable in our little family of 2 that he'd never felt the need to start his own family. "When do I get to meet her?" I asked. "This Sunday? I could bring her over for dinner." That Sunday, I cooked pot roast, Trevor's favorite. I cleaned my house until it sparkled. I wanted to make a good impression on the woman who'd captured my son's heart. Brittany arrived in a pink sundress carrying flowers, grocery store carnations, but it was a nice thought. She had blonde hair, carefully highlighted, and wore makeup that probably took an hour to apply. She called me Mrs. Morrison, until I insisted she call me Eleanor. "Your home is so charming," she said, looking around my living room. "I'd lived in this house for 43 years. Bought it with my late husband Gerald in 1982 for $87,000. Now it was worth close to $650,000, the real estate agent who kept leaving cards in my mailbox told me. But I wasn't selling. This house held every memory of Trevor's childhood. Dinner went well. Brittany asked me about my garden, admired the photos of Trevor's childhood on the mantel, and helped clear the dishes. Trevor beamed the whole evening. "She's lovely," I told him as they were leaving, and I meant it. At that moment, I truly meant it. The next few months moved fast. Too fast, maybe, but I told myself that's how young love was. They were engaged by May, a beautiful proposal at Riverside Park where Trevor had learned to ride his bike. Brittany showed me the ring, a full carat that must have cost my son 3 months' salary. "He's so generous," she said, and something about the way she said it made me pause. But I pushed the thought away. They wanted a September wedding. "Small and intimate," Brittany said. "Just close family and a few friends." "That sounds perfect," I said, "if there's anything I can do to help." "Actually," Brittany interrupted, "Trevor and I were talking. You've been alone in that big house for so long. It must be hard, keeping up with everything. The yard work, the maintenance." "I manage fine," I said. "I have a lawn service that comes every 2 weeks and—" "But wouldn't it be easier," she continued as if I hadn't spoken, "to downsize? Trevor says the house is paid off. You could sell it, get a nice little apartment, and have money left over. Money you could enjoy, travel maybe. Isn't that what retirement is supposed to be about?" Trevor was nodding. "Mom, she's right. I worry about you here. All those stairs. What if you fell?" "I'd climbed those stairs 20,000 times without falling." "I'm 72, not 92, I said, keeping my voice light. "And I love this house. It's my home." Brittany's smile tightened just slightly. "Of course, it's just something to think about." But she brought it up again the next visit, and the visit after that. I started documenting the conversations. Not recording them yet, just writing them down in a spiral notebook I kept in my bedroom drawer. Time, date, what was said. My friend Dorothy from my morning walking group had once told me, "Eleanor, always keep records. You never know when you'll need them." Dorothy was 83 and sharp as a tack. She'd been through a messy situation with her own son-in-law 5 years ago. Speaking of Dorothy, I met her every morning at 6:30 at Maple Street Park. We'd walk the 2-mile loop together, rain or shine. She was the one I first confided in about my concerns. "This girl," I said one morning in June, "she keeps pushing me to sell my house." Dorothy, who was speed-walking ahead of me in her purple tracksuit, stopped short. "Red flag, Eleanor. Major red flag. Maybe she's just trying to help. Maybe she's trying to get her hands on your equity." Dorothy had been a bank manager before retirement. She understood money. "You said your house is worth what? Over $600,000? The last assessment said $650,000. And it's paid off. No mortgage. That's pure equity, Eleanor. Pure money. And you said Trevor makes good money as an accountant?" "Around $75,000 a year, I think." "Then why does he need you to sell your house?" Dorothy crossed her arms. "Has he asked you for money?" "Not directly. But Brittany mentioned that they're looking at houses, big houses, 400,000, 500,000. She showed me listings. And let me guess, she's not working?" I paused. "She said she's between jobs. She was in marketing, but she left her last position in February, right before she met Trevor." Dorothy's expression said everything. "You think I'm being paranoid," I said. "I think you're being careful," Dorothy corrected. "And at our age, that's not paranoid. That's smart. My advice? Start protecting yourself. Get your ducks in a row. Update your will. Make sure all your documents are in order. And watch. Just watch and see what happens." That conversation changed everything. That evening I called my lawyer, Mr. Hargrove. I'd used him when Gerald died, when I'd had to navigate probate and set up Trevor's college fund. He was expensive, $350 an hour, but he was thorough. "Eleanor," he said warmly. "It's been, 15 years? "About that. Mr. Hargrove, I need to update my will." We made an appointment for the following week. When I went to his office, I brought my current will, my property deed, and my list of assets. I'd inherited a small amount from my parents. I had my pension from 30 years of teaching second grade, Social Security, and some savings. Not wealthy, but comfortable. The house was my biggest asset. "What changes do you want to make?" Mr. Hargrove asked. "I want to make sure that my house can never be sold without my explicit written consent," I said. "Even if I'm deemed incapacitated. Even if someone tries to get power of attorney." Mr. Hargrove looked at me over his glasses. "Eleanor, is there something you're worried about?" I told him everything. The engagement, the rushed timeline, the constant pressure to sell the house, Brittany's interest in my finances. "I hope I'm wrong," I finished. "I hope I'm just a paranoid old woman. But Mr. Hargrove, my gut is telling me something isn't right." "Trust your gut," he said. "I've been doing this for 40 years, and I've seen this pattern before. Adult child meets someone, relationship moves fast. Suddenly the elderly parent's assets become very interesting." He pulled out a legal pad. "Let's make sure all your documents are ironclad. And Eleanor? I'd recommend you start keeping records. Every conversation about money, about the house, about your assets, dates, times, what was said. If this goes where I think it might, you'll need evidence." I left his office with a new will, an updated power of attorney that included multiple safeguards, and a recommendation to start recording conversations. "Texas is a one-party consent state," he reminded me. "You can legally record any conversation you're part of." I bought a small recording device that week, $89 on Amazon. It looked like a pen and fit in my shirt pocket. The wedding planning continued. In July, Brittany asked me to go dress shopping with her. Just the two of us. Her mother lived in California and couldn't make the trip. "I'd be honored," I said. We went to Bella's bridal boutique on a Tuesday afternoon. Brittany tried on dress after dress, each one more expensive than the last. The one she finally chose was $3,200. It's perfect, she said, admiring herself in the mirror. Trevor's going to die when he sees me in this. It's beautiful, I agreed. You know what would be really special, she said, still looking at herself. If you could contribute to the dress, as a gift, it would mean so much to me. My pen recorder was in my pocket. I pressed the button discreetly. How much did you have in mind? I asked. Well, the dress is $3,200, and then there are alterations, probably another $400, and I need shoes, a veil, undergarments, maybe $5,000 total. I know that's a lot, but Eleanor, I'm going to be your daughter-in-law. We're going to be family. And Trevor mentioned you have savings. He said you're comfortable. $5,000. 2 months of my pension and Social Security combined. Let me think about it, I said. Her face fell. Think about it? Eleanor, the wedding is in 2 months. I need to know if I can count on you. I need to check my budget, I said firmly. The drive home was silent. She didn't speak to me for a week after that. When Trevor called, he sounded disappointed. Mom, Brittany is really hurt. She thought you'd be excited to contribute to the wedding. Trevor, $5,000 is a lot of money. You have it though, right? You're always talking about your savings. My heart sank. Are you saying you want me to give Brittany $5,000? I'm saying she's going to be my wife, and you could afford to be a little more generous. I'd raised this boy alone. I'd worked 2 jobs to pay for his private school tuition. I'd sold my engagement ring to help with his college expenses, and now he was telling me I wasn't generous enough. I'll send a check for $1,000, I said. That's what I can afford. He sighed. Fine, Mom. Whatever you think is fair. The check was never cashed, and the coldness that had started that day in the bridal shop never quite went away. In August, Dorothy noticed the change in me during our morning walks. You're worried, she said. It wasn't a question. The wedding is in 3 weeks, I said, and I feel like I'm losing my son. Tell me what's happening. I told her about the dress money, about Trevor's attitude, about the increasing pressure to sell the house. Just last week, Brittany had accidentally left a real estate flyer on my kitchen table for active senior communities. Just in case you ever decide to make a change, she'd said sweetly. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then, Eleanor, I'm going to tell you something I don't tell many people. 5 years ago, my daughter married a man named Philip. Nice guy, we thought. 6 months after the wedding, he started pressuring my daughter to get me to sign over my house. Said I was too old to maintain it. Said they'd take care of me, I could live in their guest house. What happened? I hired a private investigator. She looked at me. Cost me $2,000. Best money I ever spent. Turned out Philip had 3 credit cards maxed out, $40,000 in gambling debts, and a history of targeting older women in his previous relationships. He was planning to force the sale of my house, take the money, and disappear. I stopped walking. Dorothy, my daughter divorced him. It was ugly, but she saw the truth. Eleanor, I'm not saying this Brittany is like Philip, but I am saying that sometimes you need to investigate. You need to know who your son is marrying. That afternoon, I found a private investigator, online, vetted through reviews. His name was Marcus Chen, and his rates were $150 an hour plus expenses. I met him at a coffee shop the next day. What do you need to know? He asked. Everything, I said. I need to know everything about Brittany Walsh. That's her maiden name? Yes, she's 28. She said she worked in marketing. She grew up in California. Marcus Chen took notes. I'll start with the basics. Employment history, credit check, public records. Give me a week. A week later, I met him again. The folder he handed me was thick. Mrs. Morrison, he said, his expression serious. You need to read all of this carefully. I opened the folder. The first page was a credit report. Brittany Walsh had 3 credit cards, all maxed out. Total debt, $47,000. She had a car loan that was 2 payments behind. She had a judgment against her from a previous landlord for unpaid rent, $3,200. The second page was her employment history. She had worked in marketing for 3 months 3 years ago. Before that, she'd been a server at various restaurants. She'd been fired from 2 jobs for cash register discrepancies. The third page made my blood run cold. Brittany Walsh had been engaged twice before. The first engagement, when she was 23, had ended when the man's family discovered she'd opened credit cards in his name. The second engagement, when she was 26, had ended when she was caught trying to forge her fiancé's name on a home equity loan. "There's more," Marcus said quietly. "She's currently in a lawsuit with her previous boyfriend. He claims she stole $15,000 from his business account." I felt sick. "And Mrs. Morrison? She's not between jobs. She was fired from her last position for falsifying expense reports. That was in February, right before she met your son." I paid Marcus his fee, $1,800 total, and drove home with the folder on my passenger seat. It felt like it was burning a hole through the leather. That night, I called Trevor. "Son, we need to talk." "Mom, I'm busy. We're finalizing the seating chart." "It's important." "Can it wait until after the wedding?" 3 weeks, Mom. Can you just be supportive for 3 weeks? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him everything. But I knew he wouldn't listen. Not yet. Not when he was this deep in. "Of course," I said. "After the wedding." But I wasn't going to wait. I called Mr. Hargrove the next morning. "I have evidence," I said. "Evidence that my son's fiancée is a fraud." "Bring me everything," he said. I spent that week copying every document. I made duplicates of the private investigator's report. I saved all my recordings to a flash drive. I documented every conversation about my house, about my money, about selling and downsizing and being too old to manage on my own. Mr. Hargrove reviewed everything. "Eleanor," he said finally, "this woman is dangerous. She's a predator. You need to show this to Trevor." "He won't listen," I said. "He's in love. He thinks I'm just being an overprotective mother." "Then you need to protect yourself," Mr. Hargrove said. "Document everything. Keep this evidence safe. And whatever you do, do not give them access to your finances." 2 weeks before the wedding, Brittany came over for Sunday dinner. Trevor had been called in to work, an emergency with a client's taxes, so it was just the 2 of us. "Eleanor," she said, helping herself to my pot roast, "Trevor and I have been talking about our future." "Oh?" I kept my voice neutral. "We want kids, soon, and we need space. That condo of Trevor's is too small." She looked around my dining room. "This house, though, this house would be perfect for a family." "This house is my home," I said. "But you're alone here. It's such a waste. All these bedrooms, this yard. Think of the grandchildren who could grow up here." "I am thinking of them," I said. "I'm thinking that when I have grandchildren, I want them to visit their grandmother in the home where their father grew up." Her smile disappeared. "Trevor and I have been looking at houses. We found one we love. It's $485,000. We need a down payment. We were hoping you could help." "How much?" $50,000. I nearly dropped my fork. $50,000. A quarter of my savings. "That's a lot of money," I said. "But you have it. Trevor says you have over $200,000 in savings, plus this house. You could easily afford it, and it would be an investment in your son's future, in your future grandchildren's future." "I'll think about it," I said. "That's what you said about the wedding dress," she snapped. Then she caught herself, smoothed her features back into that sweet smile. "I just mean, Eleanor, at some point, you need to show Trevor that you support his marriage. Support us. Because right now, it doesn't feel like you do." The recording device in my pocket captured every word. After she left, I sat in my living room and cried. Not because I was sad, because I was angry. Angry that this woman thought she could manipulate me. Angry that my son couldn't see what she was doing. Angry that I'd raised him better than this. And somehow it hadn't been enough. Dorothy called that evening. "How are you holding up?" "Not good," I admitted. The wedding is in 2 weeks. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said. I've got all this evidence, but Trevor won't listen. He's so in love with her, or thinks he is. He can't see what she really is. Sometimes, Dorothy said slowly, people have to learn the hard way. But Eleanor, you need to protect yourself. That's your priority. Not protecting Trevor from his mistakes. Protecting yourself from becoming collateral damage. She was right. I knew she was right. I spent the next week preparing. I moved all my important documents to my safety deposit box at the bank. I set up a meeting with my financial advisor and put alerts on all my accounts. Any withdrawal over $100 would trigger a notification to my phone. I changed my will again, removing Trevor entirely until such time as his judgment improves, as Mr. Hargrove phrased it. Eleanor, Mr. Hargrove said during that meeting, I need to ask you something. If Trevor gets married and something happens to him, his assets would go to his spouse. Has he talked to you about life insurance? My stomach dropped. No, why? Because 6 months ago he updated his life insurance policy. He now has $1 million policy. The beneficiary is Brittany Walsh. But they're not married yet. He listed her as his fiancée. It's legal. Eleanor, you need to understand what we're dealing with here. This woman has positioned herself to benefit financially from your son, from your assets, and she's doing it systematically. What are you saying? I'm saying that if something were to happen to Trevor after the marriage, Brittany would receive $1 million. And I'm saying that combined with her history, her debt, and her focus on your house and money, Eleanor, this is a dangerous situation. I felt cold all over. You think she'd hurt him? I think she's capable of a lot more than you realize. I think you need to be very, very careful. The rehearsal dinner was a week later. Small, just immediate family and the wedding party. Brittany had 2 friends as bridesmaids. Trevor had his college roommate and his cousin as groomsmen. I wore a nice dress and smiled for photos and pretended my heart wasn't breaking. Trevor gave a toast. To the love of my life, he said, looking at Brittany. I can't wait to spend forever with you. Brittany kissed him, and everyone applauded. I clapped too, my hands feeling mechanical. After dinner, I cornered Trevor in the hallway. Son, can we talk? Just for a minute? Mom, not tonight, please. Trevor, I need to tell you something about Brittany. Stop. He held up his hand. Just stop, I know what you're going to say. That she's not good enough. That the wedding is too fast. That you don't trust her. Mom, I love her. Can't you just be happy for me? I want to be happy for you. But there are things you don't know. No. He was angry now, really angry. I don't want to hear it. Brittany told me you'd do this. She said you couldn't let go, that you'd try to sabotage us. I didn't want to believe her, but here you are the night before my wedding, trying to start drama. Trevor, I have to go. Brittany needs me. He walked away. I stood in that hallway, my recording device in my pocket capturing my son choosing her over me, and I knew. I knew that he wasn't going to listen. I knew that whatever happened next, I couldn't stop it. I just had to survive it. And that's how I ended up in my kitchen later that night, listening to Brittany tell me I was extra baggage, that I was no longer family, that after tomorrow, everything would change. Standing there in the silence after she left, I made a decision. I wasn't going to the wedding. I pulled out my phone and texted Trevor, I'm sorry, but I can't attend tomorrow. I love you, and I hope you'll understand someday. Mom. Then I turned off my phone. The next morning, what should have been Trevor's wedding day, I got up at 6 as usual. I met Dorothy for our walk. I'm not going, I told her. Good, she said. That woman doesn't deserve your presence. We walked the full 2 miles. When I got home at 8, my phone was still off. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast. I sat on my back porch with my coffee. I watched the Cardinals. At 2 o'clock, right when the ceremony should have been starting, I turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages. The first message was from Trevor, sent at noon. Mom, where are you? Then at 12:30. Mom, this isn't funny, we need you here. Then at 1:15. "Mom, please, please come. The wedding starts in 45 minutes." But it was the message from Trevor's cousin David that made my blood run cold. Sent at 2:47 p.m. "Mrs. Morrison, you need to call me, now. The wedding, something terrible happened. Trevor needs you, my hands." Shaking, I called David. "Mrs. Morrison," he answered immediately. "Where are you?" "I'm home. What happened? Is Trevor okay?" "Physically, yes, but Eleanor..." He took a breath. "The wedding didn't happen. A man showed up. During the ceremony. Right before they were about to say, 'I do.'" "What man?" "He said his name was James Thornton. He said he was Brittany's husband." The world tilted. "What?" "He stood up in the middle of the ceremony and said, 'That woman is my wife. We're still married. This wedding is fraud.'" David's voice was shaking. "Eleanor, it gets worse. He had proof. Marriage certificate filed 3 years ago, never divorced. And he said Brittany had done this before. Married men for their money, took everything she could, then disappeared. He'd been tracking her for months." I sat down hard on my kitchen chair. Oh my God. That's not all. After he showed the marriage certificate, Trevor's friend Mark. You know Mark, his roommate from college? Mark stood up too. He said he'd been investigating Brittany because something didn't feel right. He found out she'd been having an affair with some guy named Ryan. Meeting him at motels. Mark had photos. Eleanor. He had photos dated from last month. Brittany was cheating on Trevor right up until the wedding. I couldn't speak. And then, Jesus, Eleanor. Then Mark said he'd looked into Brittany's finances. She has $47,000 in credit card debt. She was planning to use Trevor's income and your house to pay it off. He had her emails. She'd written to this Ryan guy about the plan, about how she'd get Trevor to marry her, get access to your house, force you to sell it, take the money, and then, Eleanor, she was planning to poison Trevor, slowly, make it look like a heart attack, get the life insurance money and disappear with Ryan. My phone slipped from my hand. Dorothy, who'd come over and was sitting with me, picked it up. "This is Dorothy," she said. "Tell me everything." I sat there, numb, as Dorothy listened and took notes. When she hung up, she looked at me with horror in her eyes. "Eleanor," she whispered. "She was going to kill him." The wedding had imploded. Brittany had run, just ran out of the church, with her still husband James chasing after her. The police had been called. Trevor had collapsed, not physically, but emotionally. His cousin said he was sitting in the church, staring at nothing, unable to process what had just happened. "He needs you," Dorothy said. "He needs his mother." But I didn't go. Not then. Because 20 minutes later my doorbell rang. It was the police. "Mrs. Eleanor Morrison?" "Yes?" "We need to talk to you about Brittany Walsh." They came in, 2 officers, and sat in my living room. They told me that Brittany Walsh, or Brittany Thornton technically, since she was still married, had been arrested. She was being charged with attempted bigamy, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. "The man at the wedding, James Thornton, he's been working with investigators for months," one officer explained. "Brittany has done this 3 times before. Targets successful men, usually with wealthy parents, gets engaged fast, tries to access family money, then either disappears with whatever she can get or, in the worst cases, murder?" I whispered. "In one case in Arizona, yes. Her previous boyfriend died of what was ruled a heart attack, but after today they're reopening that case." The other officer leaned forward. "Mrs. Morrison, we understand that Ms. Walsh had been pressuring you to sell your house." "Yes." "Did she ever ask you about your will, your life insurance, your assets?" "Many times." "We need you to tell us everything. Every conversation, every interaction. This is going to be a major case and your testimony will be crucial." I stood up, walked to my bedroom, and came back with the folder. The recordings. The private investigator's report. The documents from Mr. Hargrove. Every piece of evidence I'd been collecting for months. "I have everything," I said. "Dates, times, recordings, financial documents, everything." The officers looked at each other, then at me. "Ma'am, one said slowly. Did you know about her history? I found out a month ago. I hired a private investigator. Why didn't you go to the police? Why didn't you tell your son? He wouldn't listen, I said simply. He was in love. He thought I was just a meddling old woman who couldn't let go. If I'd told him, he would have married her anyway out of spite. And I thought... I took a breath. I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe she'd actually changed, but I hadn't been wrong. Trevor came to see me that evening. He looked terrible. Eyes red, face pale, still wearing his wedding suit. "Mom," he said when I opened the door. He didn't say anything else. Just collapsed into my arms and cried. I held my 31-year-old son while he sobbed, his heart breaking in my arms. And I didn't say, "I told you so." I didn't say anything. I just held him. The way I'd held him when he was 3 and his father died. When he was 7 and broke his arm. When he was 15 and his first girlfriend broke his heart. When he finally stopped crying, I made him tea. We sat at my kitchen table. "You knew," he said finally. "You tried to tell me." "Yes. The private investigator report. The police said you had recordings, documents. You knew for a month." "Yes." "Why didn't you make me listen?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "Because you wouldn't have. Because you had to see it yourself. And because..." I paused. "Because I was busy protecting myself. Protecting my house, my assets, everything I've worked for. I knew if I tried to stop you directly, you'd cut me out completely. Then I'd have no way to help you when you needed it." He was quiet for a long time. "She came to see you, last night, after the rehearsal dinner." "She did. What did she say?" I got up, went to my bedroom, and came back, with the recording device. I played him the entire conversation, let him hear Brittany tell me I was extra baggage, that I wasn't family anymore, that I needed to understand my place. When it ended, Trevor's face was white. "She said that to you? In your own house?" "Yes." "And I told you that you were being clingy, that you needed to let go. Mom, I'm so sorry." "I know you are." "She was going to kill me." His voice broke. "The police said there were emails, a plan. She was going to poison me, make it look like a heart attack, take the life insurance money. $1 million, Mom. When did I even get life insurance for $1 million? And disappear with that man, Ryan." "I know. She was only marrying me for money, for your house, for everything we had. She never loved me." "I know, sweetheart." He put his head in his hands. "How did I not see it?" "Because you're not a suspicious person, because you see the best in people, because you've never had to protect yourself from someone you loved." I squeezed his hand. "Trevor, this isn't your fault." But we both knew, in some ways, it was. He'd ignored every red flag. He'd chosen her over me, over his own mother who'd raised him and would never hurt him. He'd believed her when she said I was clingy and controlling. He'd almost paid for that choice with his life. The next 3 weeks were a nightmare. Brittany was released on bail, $100,000 posted by some family member in California. Within days, she started a smear campaign on social media. She created posts claiming that Trevor had abused her, that I had sabotaged the wedding because I was jealous, that Trevor's friend Mark had lied about the affair because he wanted her for himself. She claimed the marriage to James was a mistake from her youth, that they'd separated but never officially divorced, that she'd forgotten about it. She claimed the emails about poisoning Trevor were jokes taken out of context. She claimed she was the victim of a conspiracy, and people believed her. Strangers on social media sent me hateful messages. "You evil old woman. You destroyed that poor girl's life. You couldn't stand to see your son happy." Someone posted my address online. I had to install a security camera. Trevor got it worse. His employer put him on leave while they assessed the situation. His friends were divided. Some supported him, others thought maybe Brittany was telling the truth. His ex-girlfriend Olivia, the veterinarian, reached out to say she believed him, which was something. The legal battle began. Brittany's lawyer was aggressive, expensive, clearly funded by someone. They filed a defamation suit against Trevor, against Mark, against me. They demanded $500,000 in damages for emotional distress and reputational harm. Mr. Hargrove was unfazed. "They're desperate," he said. "They're trying to silence you with legal threats. It won't work." We countersued. Trevor sued for fraud. I sued for harassment and attempted financial exploitation. Mark sued for defamation. Brittany had claimed he'd assaulted her, which was provably false given he'd been in another state when she claimed it happened. The discovery phase was brutal. Brittany's lawyers demanded every text message, every email, every piece of communication. We handed it all over, along with the private investigator's report, the recordings, the evidence of her debt, her history, her plan. Meanwhile, the criminal case proceeded. The district attorney charged Brittany with conspiracy to commit murder, attempted bigamy, fraud, and identity theft. James Thornton testified about their marriage, about how she'd stolen $30,000 from him before disappearing. The man she'd been having the affair with, Ryan, was charged as an accomplice. He'd known about the plan, had helped her research poisons that mimicked heart attacks. Trevor fell apart during this time. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't work. He moved back home with me, into his old bedroom with the posters of basketball players still on the walls. "I'm 31 years old," he said one morning, "and I'm living with my mother because I almost married a psychopath who wanted to kill me for insurance money." "You're living with your mother because you're smart enough to know when you need help," I corrected. "There's no shame in that." Dorothy became a regular presence at the house. She brought casseroles, sat with Trevor when I needed to run errands, and told him stories about her own son-in-law disaster. "We survive these things," she told him. "We're tougher than we think." The trial took 8 months to get to court. During that time, more of Brittany's history came out. The boyfriend in Arizona who died of a heart attack? Exhumed. Traces of digitalis in his system, a heart medication that can be fatal in high doses. That case was reopened as a murder investigation. A woman in Nevada came forward to say Brittany had scammed her elderly father out of $50,000 3 years ago. A man in Oregon said Brittany had stolen his identity and opened credit cards in his name. The case became national news. "Black Widow Bride Accused of Murder Plot" was the headline on CNN. My face was on TV. They used my DMV photo, which was terrible. Trevor stopped leaving the house, but we had our evidence. We had everything. The criminal trial started on a Monday in March, almost exactly a year after Trevor had first called me to say he'd met someone. I sat in the courtroom, Trevor beside me, and watched as the prosecutor laid out the case. The emails to Ryan: "Once we get the old lady's house sold and Trevor is out of the picture, we'll have at least $800,000. Maybe more if the life insurance pays out quickly." The search history on Brittany's laptop: poisons that cause heart attacks. How to induce cardiac arrest. Life insurance payout time frame. The recordings I'd made, including that last one from the night before the wedding. The jury listened to Brittany call me, "extra baggage." And I saw their faces change. Trevor's testimony was the hardest. He had to sit on the stand and admit how blind he'd been, how he'd ignored his mother's concerns, how he'd almost died because he'd been too proud and too in love to see the truth. "She made me feel special," he said quietly, "like I was the most important person in the world. I'd never felt that before." And when my mom tried to warn me, Brittany would say things like, "She just can't let you grow up. She wants to keep you as her little boy forever." I believed her because it was easier than believing my mom might be right. The defense tried to paint me as a controlling mother, tried to suggest that I'd fabricated evidence because I couldn't handle my son getting married. But they couldn't explain away the marriage to James. They couldn't explain away the emails. They couldn't explain away the poison research. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Brittany showed no emotion when the verdict was read. But when sentencing came 2 months later, 25 years to life, she finally broke. She screamed at the judge, at the prosecutor, at me. Security had to remove her from the courtroom. Trevor cried, not for her, for himself, for the year of his life she'd stolen, for the trust she'd destroyed. The civil suits took longer, but eventually we won those too. Brittany's family, who'd been funding her legal defense, settled. They paid Trevor $150,000 for emotional distress. They paid me $50,000 for harassment and legal fees. They paid Mark $75,000 for defamation. It was over. That was 3 years ago. I'm 75 now. I still live in my house, the house I refused to sell, the house that Brittany wanted so badly. It's worth $720,000 now. The market keeps going up. But I'm not selling. Trevor understands that now. Trevor finally moved back into his own place 6 months ago. He's in therapy, working through what he calls his trust issues. He dates occasionally but carefully. He asks my opinion now, not because he needs my permission, but because he values my judgment. "You were right, Mom," he told me last month over Sunday dinner. "You saw her for what she was, and I should have listened." "You're listening now," I said. "That's what matters." Dorothy and I still walk every morning. We talk about everything, our gardens, our grandchildren. She has 6, I'm still waiting for Trevor to be ready. The news, our friends. We talk about how we survived, how we protected ourselves, how we refused to be victims. Last week, a woman in my church's elderly support group approached me. She was crying. "My son is engaged," she said, "and his fiancée keeps asking me about my house." I took her hand. "Tell me everything," I said. Because that's what we do now. Dorothy and I, we're the warning system. We're the ones who help other elderly parents document, protect, prepare. We're the ones who say, trust your instincts, and keep records, and hire a private investigator if you need to. We're the ones who survived. The money from the settlement, I donated most of it to an organization that helps elderly financial abuse victims. I kept some for my legal fees and some for savings, but mostly I wanted it to help other people who might be going through what I went through. Trevor asked me once if I regretted not stopping the wedding earlier, if I regretted not forcing him to listen. "No," I said, "because you wouldn't have listened, and because sometimes people need to see the truth for themselves. My job wasn't to control you, my job was to protect myself so I'd still be here when you needed me." "I almost died," he said, "but you didn't. And now you're wiser and stronger, and you know that your mother isn't just a clingy old woman. She's someone who will always, always have your back, even when you don't realize you need it." I think about that night sometimes. The night before the wedding, standing in my kitchen, listening to Brittany tell me I wasn't family anymore. How devastated I felt. How small. But I wasn't small. I was strong. Strong enough to protect myself. Strong enough to gather evidence. Strong enough to let my son make his mistake while making sure it wouldn't destroy either of us. That's what survival looks like at 75. Not dramatic showdowns or tearful confrontations. Just quiet preparation, just documentation and lawyers and safety deposit boxes, and the determination to protect what's yours. Mr. Hargrove retired last year. Before he did, he called me. "Eleanor," he said, "in 40 years of practicing law, I've never seen someone handle a situation like that as well as you did. You saved your son's life, you saved your assets, and you did it all while that woman was actively trying to destroy you. You should be proud." I am proud. Proud that I trusted my instincts. Proud that I didn't let Trevor's anger or Brittany's manipulation convince me I was wrong. Proud that when everyone told me I was just a jealous mother, I knew better. The recording device I used, the little pen that looked innocent but captured everything, I still have it. It sits in my desk drawer next to my updated will and my property deed and all the documents that prove this house, this life, is mine, just in case, because you never know when you might need to protect yourself again. Trevor is coming over for dinner tonight. He's bringing someone, a woman named Sarah he's been seeing for 3 months. He called ahead to ask if I'd like to meet her. Only if you're ready, Mom, he said. Only if you're comfortable. I'd love to meet her, I said. And I mean it. Because I've done my research. I've looked up Sarah on social media, checked public records, asked some discreet questions. She seems genuine. She has a good job, no debt, a normal family. She seems kind. But I'll be watching, I'll be listening, I'll be ready. Because that's what 75 years of life teaches you. Trust, but verify. Love, but protect yourself. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And never ever let anyone tell you that you're just extra baggage. Would you have forgiven them? Or would you have stood your ground like I did? Sometimes I wonder if younger people understand what it's like to be treated as invisible in your own family, to be dismissed and discarded and expected to just accept it. To be told you're no longer needed, that your time is over, that you should step aside and be grateful for whatever crumbs of attention you're given. I stood my ground. I protected what was mine. And when the truth came out, I was still standing. That's what empowerment looks like at my age. Not loud or dramatic, just steady, just strong, just surviving, one documented conversation at a time.